Hello, welcome to another episode of the Panachecast. Pete and I are here this week in the offices of Bristows with Chris Holder and Vikram. Some of you who watched episode 11 will have remembered that we mentioned Chris's talk at the Gleneagle 2019 IT Forum, where he talked about AI, and the tagline was AI or Excel on steroids. We mentioned that, and we were very keen that Chris, you replied very kind of you to what we said. We wanted to just have a chat to you about AI, what it means for you and as lawyers, but before we get into too much detail, tell us a bit about you, tell us a bit about the firm. What do you guys do?
Go on, Vic.
Sure. Hi, I'm Vic Khurana. I'm an IT lawyer here at Bristows. So we're a law firm based in London, although with a Brussels office as well. We basically specialise in the technology and life sciences sectors. So the majority of our clients are people who operate in those two sectors, either buying or procuring services or supplying themselves. So my background is in general commercial technology law, transactions, software, cloud, bits of data, outsourcing, those kinds of matters.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Chris Holder. I'm an IT lawyer, been a commercial IT lawyer for 25 plus years. Started my career just over the river working in-house at IBM, and I've been working in the commercial IT sector ever since. So I've been doing a lot of the similar things to Vic. IT outsourcing, business process outsourcing, systems integration, hardware, software, cloud, and now, the last few years, working with clients who are interested in AI, who are interested in robotics. I used to be, until 31st December last year, I was one of the co-chairs of the IBA Technology Committee. And so on that committee, we were very much focusing on technology, new technologies coming through, and AI and robotics was certainly my pet topic.
Yeah.
Hence the reason I was very surprised and delighted that I got a mention.
You were more surprised that we didn't have bad stuff to say about you. I think that's what you were checking, wasn't it?
I did check you up.
Yeah.
Who's referring to me?
You do your weekly Google of yourself.
That's right.
So that's what we do here. And Bristows, we're very, as Vic said, very tech-led firm. And we advise a lot of clients on new technologies coming through. So yes, we do a lot of the commercial IT stuff, contracts, buying and selling of IT systems, but we've got a real eye to new technologies, AI being one of them.
Yeah. And I guess that stuff has changed quite a bit in the 20 odd years since you started with it. Things have moved on, especially recently, quite a good speed.
Indeed. Back when I started doing all this, of course, data centres. Who use big IT systems? They're either big corporations or government, and all the data people, the data centre, all the IT people, were probably stuck in basements, vast basements that were housing huge amounts of kit. And of course, since then, you've got the movement from data centre based, client server, and then the movement into the cloud, and then 2007, the iPhone, and social media, and applications, and so the movement of IT from basements and big tech and big tin to what we have today with the stuff that we can carry around in our pockets is been marked.
I guess it's now someone else's basement, isn't it? The cloud is someone else's basement, I guess.
Yeah, our basement is on an island.
Some island somewhere.
Off Greenland, purely for cooling purposes.
Yes.
I mean, it's and in a sense, new technology, but the same old issues.
Yeah.
So when Vic and I talk about commercial IT, back in the day it was commercial IT around things like data centres and software, and now it's commercial IT with people looking for IT solutions, often backed by new technologies like robotic process automation, like AI, whatever that is, but we'll get into that in a minute, I'm sure. But yes, it's the same type of approach from a commercial, from a legal perspective, but they're different technologies, and technology is changing at pace.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I liked about IBM very much was every 6 months it completely changed what it was selling, and it within the company it used to change the names of the various departments. Technology changed rapid.
AI obviously a massive feature, and that was the point, the topic of the original talk that you gave that we picked up on. How software developers and so on come to you, ask you for legal advice on their contracts and so on. How do their customers view AI? Do you have experience of that? Do people think it's a real thing that's going to change everything? Is there a bit of snake oil around, perhaps? What's being said about AI? What's your view? What's the customer?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and so we kind of act on both sides of that aisle, like knowledge organisations thinking about the use of AI and how they may get better insight out of data or use technology, as well as the providers and suppliers themselves who are kind of designing services that for certain purposes. I think obviously on that provider side, just from a technology standpoint, they're the ones who are the experts and understand it and how it works, and we kind of help them with contracting and risk and things like that. I think on the kind of what I'd call the kind of government and UK PLC perspective, who are interested in working with those partners, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. I think there's a high level awareness because you just open up a newspaper at the weekend and you're obviously reading about AI, there's a lot of hype as well as the risks involved and things like that. But in terms of what it is and how it can actually be useful and functional for them, I think is a lot of lack of clarity. So I think as Chris said, we were talking earlier, weren't we? Like a lot of services or systems are badged as AI in the same way as they were with cloud. When cloud came out, sort of 10 years ago, everything was cloud. And we even do see some companies who want to call their services AI because some of the big venture capital firms are looking, their algorithms are set up to actually look for those buzzwords and trends to try and value the company. So there's an incentive on the supply side to kind of say it's AI and it's revolutionary. Sometimes we work with them and ask the lawyers asking questions in the room to work out actually how it works. And you can arrive at a conclusion, it's maybe Excel on steroids, or it's automation, or lower hanging fruit than the full transformative AI promise. So what I find really interesting anyway is working with organisations to work out actually where they want to arrive at, what's their destination point. Is it better access and insight of their data? Is it to change how people operate within the business? Or is it to procure a solution for the sake of it? And it's often not the latter, but the mistake they sometimes make is to buy something because it sounds good and the pitch has been great, whereas it doesn't necessarily service a need. So that's the kind of understanding gap I think exists.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. We've said before, haven't we, that AI almost seems to be something you have to say that you do, just to have skin in the game, even if you don't really do it, or if it's not a pure and true AI. But also, what does AI even mean? And you've said, maybe the definition of AI over the years has changed. That's why I particularly liked your comment, Chris, about it being Excel on steroids. And I think you said, it's just a decision tree. It takes you from step by step through to an ultimate decision.
Yeah, and I think it's for a lot of people to you think of AI from the movies and things like that, of thinking machines and something you can have a conversation with, and maybe it's better for people to think of this not as like an artificial intelligence, but almost like an automated intelligence. It's a way of automating business processing and stuff like that to do those things for you.
It's clearly the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yes.
And actually, being a lawyer, the definitional part of all of this I find quite frustrating, because when you do pick up papers, when you look at things on the internet, and everyone talks about AI taking over the world or AI providing a solution, and actually it's nothing to do with artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? It's a method by which the computing industry is trying to replicate human-like behaviour. And I love I love the examples of things like Siri. The ability to take on board data as a device from people's voices. I think that's AI, because I'm not inputting data via a keyboard. I'm speaking to something and it's replying to me. That's an artificially intelligent way. It's taking on board data and it's replying to me using a voice, not a screen thing that I read. It's using that type of approach is we can, from a contractual perspective, that type of approach is easy to deal with, as opposed to machine learning. When machines are changing their functionality as they go along. And that opens up a whole different realm of contract law and the implications for law generally, and for businesses, whether you're buying or selling. Because if you're buying something, you're buying it as a steady state on day one, and if it changes its functionality after day 30, what have you just purchased? And how things like warranties work. What am I warranting? And how do I do this? So I think the definitional aspects of all of this people need to understand the difference between a few things, and so when you do get the picture of the Terminator on the front page near you, and that Terminator is going to take over the entire world, everyone needs to gulp down a big cup of reality, I would suggest.
Yes,
and that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and do you feel that's one of the biggest areas where you're having to work in now is to button that kind of thing down? I mean, I guess in software in general and computing in general, we talk about things moving from people's internal data centers into the cloud and things like that. When that's happening, it's still the same kind of software, and you're still buying laptops, you're still buying desktops, they're just talking to something external now. But AI, or what people are terming as AI, and machine learning, where decisions are then being made by machines rather than by a person, by a lawyer, by someone else, opens up a whole new area which is moving at a speed that are people able to keep up with that? Is the law and things, are those issues able to be kept up with, or is it going too fast for that?
Yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, that sounds more transformational, and the outcome is different than putting data into the cloud, for example. In terms of, and there's this whole realm of work we see, various kinds of organisations under the umbrella of what I call digital transformation. Where it's, I think the deals we used to do in the space were outsourcing, so it could be the same thing provided at a lower cost in a different place or whatever it might be. I think now large organisations are like, we're sitting on tons of data. There's something like 90% of all data has been created in the last 3 years or something like that. It's just the exponential increase in data.
Stats made up.
Right, well, no one fact checked that, but I think it said something like that. And they realise they could be making decisions better, or making better use of people's time, or doing things in different ways, or servicing their consumers and customers better digitally, or whatever it might be. So that's a change, and they want to use tools to enable that transformation to happen. Now, whether they always get that right or not is a different question. And I think in terms of the law and legal work around that, that is different. I mean, GDPR being a classic example. At the same time, at the kind of nexus point or the inflection point of AI, GDPR comes along, and some people's view is it could enable AI solutions to happen in a more safer environment. Some people then say, actually, some of the use cases around AI are prevented because there's question marks about whether you can use people's data to make decisions about them. That's been brought in by GDPR. Exactly. So then you've got this kind of the law rubbing up against technology change, and that the law is always going to be behind. The first drafts of GDPR were done in 2013-14 and didn't change a lot until they were implemented in 2018. So, there's this whole thing around that, and I think there's a nervousness within organisations about just deploying technology that then takes decision making and control out of the hands of where it traditionally lies, just from a risk management point of view, but as well as a legal compliance perspective. So there's a big challenge there for the industry. I think,
and a regulatory perspective. I mean, you can't outsource your way out of a problem, whether it's to a third-party company or to a machine. So says again the Financial Conduct Authority. That's one aspect. Yeah. But I think the first starting point of all of these things, use of new technology, certainly from a customer's perspective, is what is it you're trying to achieve? Yeah. Now, whether that can be achieved via a supplier who is supplying AI or machine learning or something in the cloud, or that remains to be seen. Fundamentally, nothing's changed. What are you trying to achieve from your business perspective by using new technology? Yeah. First question I generally ask: what are you trying to achieve? What are your objectives?
Yeah, which is useful, I think, for anybody watching from a legal tech startup background or technology background generally, wanting to approach guys like you guys for services. I find often that they're thinking, well, the AI solution will do all the work for you and will just eliminate the workforce, and maybe that's not quite right. And actually, I've said to you before, I have a bit of a problem with people thinking necessarily that the machine, the software, whatever, will deliver the answer to you so much as it will filter out the irrelevant stuff and provide you with options. Yeah. And I think the example I gave to you before was, well, I might have an opinion on something one day and have a slightly different opinion the next day. So I wouldn't want the machine to make the decision for me. I'd like to keep that within my own, with my own gift.
But in reality, that is what's happening. And if you look at software licenses, or you look at contracts that are used by companies providing AI solutions, those contracts don't take responsibility for decisions but made by software and or machines. Those contracts are drafted in a way that says you're purchasing software, you're purchasing a solution that does a certain thing.
Right.
The output from that functionality is something that you as a company, as you as human beings, you decide how you deal with these things.
Yeah.
So there is from a contracting perspective, it backs up that whole regime of I'm not ceding control to my machine. I'm keeping the decision-making piece to my executive, my C-suite. Oh, I hate that saying. Why was it? But the executives can and they use technology as an enhancement, as an augmentation, if you like. The minute that changes, this is when you're into a field of all of a sudden I'm trying to draft things and looking at liability issues around decisions made by machines.
Yeah.
I still think that's a long way off, but it will happen. And the real clear example for everyone is autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I say decisions, machines don't make decisions. They're machines. Machines respond to data, and so they do things. They might learn how to do things differently as they are used, but a machine does not make a decision, because that kind of that sort of emotional thing, that morality issue. That doesn't. It's the machines.
Yeah. It's got to be told what decision to make, right? So
based on the data that it's taking on board, based on the way it is set up to work. So its algorithms, how it processes data, what happens next in certain situations.
It's not when you're talking about autonomous vehicles and things, and you're talking about things like a car avoiding an accident, it's not making a decision on how to avoid that accident.
Exactly.
It's choosing a path based on the data that's going through, and it's situational awareness, and that is we tend to, and because we talk about AI and things like that, we picture it in our minds as almost like a person weighing up the odds and making a decision, but that's not actually what happened. It is, like you say, it's a decision tree that has gone down based on the data, and that's what it does. It's not a thought process.
From a legal perspective, a lot of debate has been had around how does one deal with this type of machine from a liability perspective, and the European Union, the European Parliament put together a white paper several years ago based on civil liability for robotic autonomous systems. And one of the things they came up with was should these machines have legal personhood? That's not to say, and this is not a Bill of Rights type thing, it's should they have liability themselves? Should those IT systems, should those machines have liability themselves? And then the next question is, what's the point of suing a machine? And then you're into, well, maybe all those machines get put into a certain class of thing, and there is a big old state-backed insurance fund that will pay out as and when that machine does something that inflicts harm or loss on a person or a corporation. All to be debated. What was the answer? There is no answer, but it's an incredibly interesting talking point.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously that may or may not affect us as things progress. I suspect the balance now probably won't initially, but if you were a UK company and you were involved in developing a solution that was going to be deployed in Europe, you'd still be affected by that or elsewhere. So it's an international thing nowadays, isn't it?
It is an international thing.
How a state-backed thing would work, I don't know. For the European Union, obviously there's a European Union pot.
Potentially.
Yes.
But again, from a jurisdictional perspective, within the EU bloc, clearly they're looking at a European-wide, not necessarily solution, but here's a range of answers to a different range of questions. Whether you go down the European insurance-backed fund or France, Germany, each having distinctly different funds, I can see that happening more readily than a large block type fund. But hey, who knows?
Yeah.
And I guess these kind of things are becoming more complicated now that things are more global as well. The software with cloud-based solutions and things now, UK companies are just as easily able to sell solutions to China, to Australia, to the US as they are to sell them to someone on their doorstep. There's no there's no barrier anymore to setting these things up. It's if I've got everything in my cloud-based, if I'm hosting everything in AWS or in Microsoft Azure or something like that, there's no reason why I can't spin up my AI-based solutions in these other territories. So those markets are more readily available, and the laws are different in all of these markets. So I guess that's a big problem. It could be a big problem for these software providers and people buying those solutions as well.
I mean, I think from a software perspective that works. I think when you're into getting into the AI machine learning thing, the difference between all those jurisdictions, the difference is data. So if for example, we can go back into the autonomous vehicle thing. If you're selling a software solution that is based on a data set arrived from the use of autonomous vehicles in the United Kingdom, how is that solution going to work in France? I mean, I can foresee one major problem is because they drive on the other side.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But what's good for London might not necessarily work in Paris or in Rome. And who wants to take a data set driving from the Italian? Love them all, but in Rome, good God, they drive in a different way. Yeah. So data is different for the country. So what solutions are being provided? MedTech. A medical technology solution based on a data set of patients in Iceland is going to be slightly different somewhere else. So that, to me, that's a big issue. And how that works, I don't know. But people again will have to think about it.
Yeah, and I think it goes on to something you were mentioning as well earlier, Vic, as well, to take it on to that kind of data set options. People are now finding, and I think what firms are discovering is that now they're using all these new solutions and stuff, suddenly the amount of information they're capturing on their clients, on the services they're providing, is huge. I mean, we've talked before that companies like Netflix and things, the money is not necessarily in showing you a TV show. It's that analytical data that they get about the audience, what people watch, how long they watch things for, all that kind of information, and
where they watch things.
Where they watch all of this. And as people take more of this data on, there's the opportunities for that data to be shared, to be monetized, and things like that. But I'm guessing for law firms, for other firms, do they come to people like yourselves for advice on what can we share? How do we cope with GDPR and stuff, allowing us to monetize this kind of information?
One of my colleagues has got a phrase which is every organisation is now a data organisation.
Yeah.
Which is even, I think, I won't name any particular names, but new market entrance into an existing industry, selling a product or service that you think could even be quite low tech or quite low touch in the way it operates. There's a big data play often at work in terms of their business model. Maybe some of the reasons they got funding in certain instances is because the potential of the data that they're collecting in something that you might not really like a new vaping thing or something like that. Yeah. Suddenly, Bluetooth and sensors and IoT connected to devices, generating data where there previously wasn't that much data capture. Yeah. A lot of those organisations don't yet know what use or utility that data will have, except there could be one. Yeah. The VCs are looking at it too and funding them too. And then suddenly there's all these kind of potential use cases that open up to them. Yeah. And sometimes they want to be the data aggregation platform for that industry. Mm-hmm. Especially when they've got more of a tech background, they're coming to disrupt or enter an industry. They take that kind of tech innovation view into something that was pretty low, kind of not very heavily advanced in the way it used technology. So they're then looking to aggregate data, and there is a race to the top in these things that lends itself. It's the scale argument, just like the Silicon Valley companies and some of the organizations in China. The bigger they are, the easier it is for them to deploy the data at scale because they've just got more of it and they've just got better insights. So there is this whole challenge, and a load of companies we see now which are kind of probably beyond startup, but sort of high growth, entering a new market, seeking to do something quite differently. That platform kind of business is changing loads of things, from from health and med tech to financial services to all kinds of things that we can enable. And we work with a company that's a shelf tech company as a consultant for supermarkets and other retail outfits to work out product placement. And that's an industry that's existed for a long time. But the data that they've collated and will collate from their big partners and customers allows them to do it quicker and better and smarter. And therefore, the difficulty when they kind of then sell and contract for their products and services is, do their customers and partners understand that some of the data that they're providing this new entrant is going to benefit potentially other customers, even if it's anonymized and disaggregated, whatever it is, it's still producing better outcomes and outputs. So it's really interesting. So there's very few meetings we have with potential new clients which don't touch upon data.
Yeah, and we get more and more situations where we get it from a corporate perspective, companies buying other companies, not for sales or generating sales, it's for data. Yeah. Because they can see that company has access to data because collected over the years that is very valuable to the acquiring company, and that hasn't happened before because what was data? It was client lists.
Yeah. Have you seen any of that data aspect coming into the legal tech scene? Are any technology companies coming to you and saying, well, what data have you got on your clients that you could use better? Which contracts do you use most? Which bits of the contract take the longest to negotiate? Any of that going on as far as you know?
It is, and we've been approached and we've had debates internally about what is it, what data do we hold, and how could we make better use of it? And it's an interesting exercise for a law firm to undertake, because traditionally, what is it that one sells? It's law, the practice of law. What is the data? What is the most important data that you hold? What is information about the law and the way it changes and how it's put into practice? But there are clearly other areas, as you rightly pointed out, things around. From a process perspective, if I'm going through a large merger and or acquisition, from a process, what do I actually do? What do I actually do as a law firm? What do I actually do as a solicitor? And can I use data to find a solution to make what I do more efficient? Or more accurate, for example. And so things like the due diligence aspects of all these things and e-disclosure. E-disclosure might be slightly different because given the fact that most information is digital these days, you need these tools to help. But certainly from a due diligence perspective, the ability to go through hundreds of thousands, if not millions of documents quickly and figure out things, what you're asking for, give us the termination dates of all the agreements I've ever signed. That's valuable data. That's an important part of a commercial agreement. So certainly I would imagine, and there are lots of law firms out there who are looking at this. There are lots of law firms who are starting their own software incubation, IT incubation fields, aren't they? And that's what happens there will be very interesting to see in the future. Traditionally the sector hasn't been awash with technological innovation. The movement from the typewriter to the word processor was spectacular. But when I was a young lawyer back when it was black and white, I remember partners saying, "Why have you put that PC on my desk?" "Oh, okay, right, I know, I've got a use for it. Door stop." That sort of thing. But now we all use computers, and we can see how that type of thinking around data and the processes that we use internally, that's the way it's going to change.
I think there's a growing recognition among the industry as a whole that we can do better and use tools where it makes sense. I think some lawyers get nervous when you talk about more advanced AI and decision-making tools because, aren't we as lawyers meant to make sure that we understand how we got to an answer and own that answer and what all the regulators think and things like that, and clients and things like that. And also we've got a process where we train junior lawyers and kind of expose them to vast amounts of what was typically might be called grunt work, but that's a way to get used to the issues that they're going to need to advise on more strategically when they're
But this is an augmentation as opposed to replacement argument. And now I can tell my story back in 1988 when I first started, and part of my job as a trainee was to come in, or an article clerk in those days, was to come in early, and I had to physically open letters, take out the letters, look at the initials, and put the letter into the pigeonhole with the partners or the fee earner's initials on. You know, that is part and parcel of what I did. Now, I wasn't got rid of when email came in. My job just changed, and so there is and this, I think you can probably draw the parallels between that and virtually everything that anybody does. There'll be new jobs created as a result of the technological revolution, and the way one does one's job, it will change. You have to adapt. You know, I don't have to come in anymore, and none of the trainees have to come in and open letters because it just arrives in my inbox. So that's technology changing a business process. If you like.
I'm sure there's still a lot of firms clinging onto their fax machines and unwilling to let go.
There were various debates. I've been privy to various debates of should we turn off the fax machine? Should we? I don't know where we ended up on that.
Yeah, but I guess that is difficult for some firms. I mean, as an outsider from a law firm, I mean, I've got my colleague Neil, who is the lawyer here, whereas I interact with law firms as an outsider. That impression of a law firm is still, people using fax machines, people doing all this kind of stuff. They only talk on telephone, they won't email you and all that kind of thing. And change is coming, and it's happening quickly. But I guess the people who are still running the law firms, who still have the initial say, have been doing it for a long time, and that is difficult for people to get involved with. Probably not for their new associates that are coming in, who are wondering, why are we still doing things like this?
But I'm a member of the International Bar Association, the IBA, which is the biggest association of lawyers in the world, and one of the projects that the IBA put forward was around the use of technology in law firms globally, law firms around the world. And the vast majority, 95% of law firms around the world are one or two partner law firms. And so the IBA had a look at that, and there's no two ways about it. Everyone uses technology, but what do law firms need to understand? They need to understand things like cybersecurity, how to protect their data, firewalls, that type of thing, which is quite a basic concept from our perspective, but actually out there in the real world, it's not. There's still a load of manual processes happening around the world, and that's the sort of thing that lawyers are used to. But change is coming, there's no two ways about it. And so the use of technology within law firms, it's changed hugely in the last 5 years. I don't think, was there a legal tech sector defined 5 years ago?
Don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I certainly don't remember seeing it, but it's interesting. I think we've seen the beginnings of it, and there's still a bigger wave behind the first one coming, I think.
Absolutely.
You see some universities now offering master's degrees in legal tech. You see a lot of law firms saying, actually, we're going to have a legal tech seat in your training contract so that you can understand it. And I've said to you before, you'd be better off trying to make me a different type of lawyer than you would make me a software developer, because I wouldn't have a clue. But understanding how it works, and the decision tree idea behind it is useful. So I think people are getting much more switched on to it. But do those one and two partner firms need a blockchain? Probably not. Do they need AI? Well, maybe, but probably not. What they need is something to help them just through their process and procedure.
What they need is an open source platform. If you think about it, it's that law firm in a box idea, isn't it? I can log in through my internet browser, and automatically I'm into a platform that covers off all the bases. I've got an accounting package, I've got CRM package, I've got word processing package, I've got data storage, I've got the ability to update documents. That traditionally has been a real blocker to individuals or one-two partner firms from seeing that, because it costs a load of money. But if it's on the cloud for £29.99 a month and you get invited to the Christmas party, that's a different thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You can see that happening. You guys.
What we've looked at in things is one of the concerns we've had in the sort of the legal tech and area and what's been produced is there's lots of little niche bits of software, really cool little tools, little AI solutions to do one specific thing, and there's a lack of that, as you say, just a tool for what people need to do for their day-to-day jobs and things. I mean, we look at some of the contract reading systems, things like Raven and stuff like that, which can process thousands of documents, and those are brilliant for massive organisations and stuff. But again, for an individual lawyer somewhere, maybe not much use. And as you say, those document automation and aspects like that are useful to everyone, but not everyone can afford something like Contract Express or has the skills to do that. And I'm guessing that's an issue for these firms, is for the smaller, the medium downwards. They can't pick up these things. They don't have the skills internal to work with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can see that, and it also it's the cost issue.
Yeah,
I'm sure everyone would love it. All these things. If it was £5 a month. Yeah, and it's not. So you had for larger firms, absolutely makes perfect sense, because there's the throughput of information, the throughput of data. Compared to the amount of transactions they do, it makes it commercially worthwhile. But if it's if one or two partner firms are trying to buy a system that was designed for Clifford Charts, then
I wonder if there's also an issue about imperative as well, because it's like, how does any professional organisation or law firm or lawyer or process change? It's because you need to, because either your clients are demanding it, or because if you don't, then you'll not be able to keep up with your competitors or things like that. And I think we do see, and I think in the industry as a whole, clients use these tools in-house too. Yeah. So they would be surprised if their law firms, who whose business it is to do what they're doing, and they're giving them work to do that, are not advocating for the use of the tools where it makes sense to do so. It doesn't mean you have to just put your law firm in the box and just upload everything to Cloud. It's just use case selection in its classic sense, isn't it? So does it make sense to use this automation tool because it will deliver better value for the client, or be better use of lawyers' time and things like that? It's not always about lower cost. Sometimes it's also just about value adding and things like that. So,
and we get asked, don't we? We get asked. Every law firm gets asked when you're going through the competitive procurement thing and trying to get into panels more and more. It's so what technological innovations can you bring to us? How do you use technology for the advantage of your clients? Great question.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting one, isn't it? And one of the points I wanted to pick up with you is that there's an obvious benefit to assuming you can make the financials work internally, there's an obvious benefit to delivering an equal project, hopefully at less cost. But where's that cost saving really? Is it being passed on to the client? And you have to pass it on to the client in order to get onto the panel or to win the work. I slightly worry about potential races to the bottom in terms of fees on those sorts of things. But where is the advantage? And is it just pushed onto the consumer, who gets an equal service at a lower cost, but the firm has to then fund it?
And what one of the things that interests me is the types of solutions that people are looking to buy. Do you feel that people really don't know what they want? They've heard about AI, they've heard about blockchain, and they've just been given the imperative of I've got to go and buy something. I've got to be able to compete in the market now. I have to have technology, so I've got to go and buy some tech. Or do you think people are really looking at how they run their business, saying, right, well, I know I've got to do something, but let's look at our processes and find out actually where would something fit in, or are we just panic buying things?
I think the classic legal answer to that one, which is it depends.
It depends, but I think also, there's lawyers, tend to be bright people, but also part of their job is about risk management, so they can be cautious as well. So I don't think they're going to just splurge lots of money on tools or solutions where they don't know exactly how it's going to improve things, or whether it's just service level improvements or things like that. I think there's a deep level of input that goes into and consideration into these kinds of things. I think, and even from the client perspective, some of the things we get asked for on pitches and in presentations isn't just how do you make sure you lower cost using tools. It's also how do you improve the service using tools, because there's that side of it too, which I find that personally really interesting in terms of, I think we're moving away from 10-page memos and moving towards using infographics and risk reports done through design tools and things like that as well. So that actually improves the output. It makes it more valuable, and there's a lot, especially on some of the bigger projects we do, there's an expectation about legal project management as well.
Yes,
in order to add that as an adjunct to the service, I think you do have to use some tools. You could just use your table in Word, right? But equally, if you're managing a team and a client and there's real-time reporting or regular risk reporting at each stage of like a negotiation, without using some sort of, it doesn't have to be AI, but it's going to be different types of tools. Some of them are just design-led actually, because the look and feel of the output, you can back it up with the memo and the caveats or whatever it might be. But in terms of what does the senior stakeholder see, where are we at on this project, that is something that helps us improve the service as well. So I think there's lots of different benefits to realise. I guess one of them is cost, and then you can debate where that lands and who benefits. But there's a whole, can it improve what we do as a service, as commercial lawyers as well, which is really interesting.
I'm so delighted that you said, where are we up to on this project? Because that's what I keep saying to Peter. The number one question, as far as I can tell, is where are we up to? How long is it going to be before we get
he's got
finished?
a great dashboard to show you.
That's the plan.
That's all we need is a dashboard, really. That's the most important thing.
Billing and time recording and budgeting and so on, you can put numbers out, but a nice pie chart, is much more, visually pleasing. But you're right. I mean, the whole idea of where are we up to? And okay, you could phone up and send an email back, or have a discussion and tell people what's outstanding and best guess as to how long I think it's going to take. Or hopefully people do what we would say is the right thing, and they have an online interactive dashboard, whatever, checklist that they can say, I can see what needs doing, I'll focus on that, get that done. Those sorts of easy wins, really. I mean, those are straightforward. So little seems to be being done in that regard. So there's lots of room for improvement, and really easy improvement too, I think, and stuff that it's not a blockchain by any means, but actually, and then when you do produce something like that, what you can pull out of it, what you can extract out of it, is actually also very useful, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's all that. I think the user base of legal services is changing a bit too. It used to be the in-house lawyer would instruct and integrate the advice back in-house and deal with the project. Now, I think, and it's great for us because we enjoy it, we get to work directly with lots of people in the business, more across a delivery or technical department or through commercial with finance. Their expectation is actually to work with us in a different way, how they might work with the Big Four or their auditors or something like that. So that's an imperative for us to kind of speak their language a lot of the time as well, which we quite enjoy. So.
Yeah, that's very true. Just before we wrap up, I can't finish without asking you, Chris, a little bit about, you've been flying the flag for Bristows out in South Korea, speaking internationally. What's the international market like? And you were telling us before we came on that it's pretty good, but pretty interesting. Tell us a bit about that.
I mean, it's part of what I was doing with the IBA, so I was co-chair of the Technology Committee. Big plug for the Technology Committee. Hope you're watching, guys. I'll send you the link.
We'll put some links in there and stuff.
We were out in Seoul with the big conference out in Seoul. An amazing place, very tech savvy, and everyone has an interest in the next big thing. So blockchain is a big thing. It's a big, and AI still very relevant. Machine learning very relevant. The implications of those technologies for lawyers across the board. Every section, every committee, and there's a whole vast number of committees within the IBA from managing law firms to litigation to closely held companies and general M&A, tech, IP, you name it, maritime, across the board. These technologies are all part and parcel of what people are talking about. And so out in the big wide world, it would be no surprise to anyone that technology is front and centre. Virtually all corporations and entities now use technology. You can't communicate without using technology. You can't make use of the information you have as data without using technology. It's probably the number one priority, I would suggest, on most corporate agendas. So it's fascinating to go around to these conferences and talk to colleagues from across the globe. Data protection is a big issue. Not all jurisdictions have the same level of legislation, if you like. Not all governments have the same approach to the safeguarding of their individuals, their citizens' privacy rights. And so that is an area that will continually develop. What we do know is from the various conferences and meetings that we've had, is that there is a lot of focus on a few areas, and one of them is the rule of law itself. Certainly that's an IBA imperative to really go out there and say, how valuable the rule of law is to countries, to individuals. So it's a great thing to go out there and talk to other practitioners. There are similar issues. We talk about various countries have different approaches, and what the UK does is sometimes looked to as being a high watermark, and sometimes it's not. But being an English lawyer abroad it's a fascinating thing, because you get a huge diverse views on common law, particularly in this various applications as against civil law. But it's Seoul itself, massive tech city. I don't know what they do with the old people, because everyone up to about 25.
Everyone's got their hidden ways.
There must be a small village where everyone's really enjoyed themselves.
Away from all this tech and stuff like that. They're all very happy.
Very connected. I think that's probably that's a blueprint for what's going to go on, I would suggest. But fascinating stuff.
It is. Well, brilliant. Well, thanks very much, guys. That's been a...
before we go, can I put my flag up?
Of course. Absolutely.
We should have had that.
Well, there it is.
So these guys did, when they did episode 11, there was a lot of chat about flags. So I brought mine along.
We got
the Bristows flag.
Yeah, we have the Bristows flag. It's our first bit of advertising on the show. To talk to these guys, they're the experts in this field.
Well, you said you'd deliver a flag, and you did.
That's right.
Brilliant. It's fantastic. We forgot ours, unfortunately. We'll have to go to the marketing team.
As you say, ours wasn't big enough, so we decided to hide it behind the sofa at the moment. But no, thank you very much for talking to us. It's been really interesting, and we could talk for hours more, but we don't want. We'll save that for another instalment, I think.
Lovely.
That's great. No, thank you very much. Thanks, guys.